Hello, my name is Chinwendu Kelechi. I'm an artist. I work majorly with traditional Igbo symbols and aesthetics. I grew up in Umuahia with my family. I can't exactly say how I got started in art, but I remember when growing up, my brother was the artist. He could make really realistic portraits of people, and he was, known in our small circles at church, at school, and I learned by copying him, always trying to do what he did and destroying a lot of his drawings in the process. I always was interested in patterns and designs. I'm the one in the family who, when there's a new textile, they ask me, what do you think this is good for? Maybe a big maxi dress or a small dress. And I can remember as when I was really young, tracing my fingers alongside the patterns on cloths, because they really interested me and I wanted to know what they meant, what they were saying. So that led me further in life to research textiles and their usage as communication, storytelling, record keeping, even as legal tender as well in the past before during the colonial economy, paper money, coin money was introduced. Yeah, from a young age, but children, they're always drawing and painting as well as they can, so I wasn't special doing that. It's just something that kids do, but I took it on as I grew up. I can't say exactly what it was, but as far back as possible, when we swept our compounds really young, because it's a sandy compound, and we sweep in this lyrical flowing pattern, which also translates in my work. And afterwards, during holidays, when we had the time, we would start to draw on these compound floors, and we would use the sweeping patterns as part of our drawing. So if we're drawing maybe a girl with long hair or wearing a flowing dress, those lyrical patterns would also be a part of the design. So we're always doing that and scribbling on walls. And but when I started doing what is commonly known as art, which is drawing realistic images, when I was maybe about 7-8 years old, I'm not sure, we had this youth program at church. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and we were asked to make some designs because we're having our youth day. It's the Adventist version of a Boy Scout, Girl Scout, the Pathfinders Club. So my brother, he was the one with the job. He was making all of these really beautiful designs and I was copying him. And my sister, as kids, she was like the one who couldn't do any of the drawings or paintings. So my brother would make them and I would copy him, and then she would beg either of us to make for her. And then, those are one of my earliest memories of making art as it's known. I always had an interest in fashion. I wanted to be a model during my teenage years, but I feel that's what a lot of young girls want to do because, modeling is so fun and everyone looks so beautiful. But particularly, it's the style of the clothes that I was interested in, and I can sew really well by hand. So I always look out for specific patterns on cloth to say, okay, this one will be perfect for a skin tight jumpsuit sort of thing, or this one will be perfect for something that flows, or this one, don't even put it on the outfit, just put it on like maybe the edges or, accessories, things like that. So yeah, it does translate into fashion. I can't say exactly what's a specific turning point. I feel like, each moment is birthing another thing. So I can't say this is the big one, because each moment is just replicating. It's like how water, concentric circles, how they ripple. Yes, so I can say this is the bigger one because it's spreading out even more. I studied history and international studies for my degree. My most formal training in art I got at secondary school. There were like a whole lot of things that were only mentioned at school that were not taught because it wasn't part of what we were to learn. We were focusing on political history because it's international relations. But all of the little things I mentioned, like the Mbari arts and Nsibidi, they weren't teaching it. So I started researching those things on my own as soon as I got out of school. Started conducting my own field work as much as I could afford to, because field work can be expensive. Before I started finding some specific people in the African art scene I'd gone through a whole lot of social media influences because, I had like my awakening on social media. So there's this lady artist and she paints with her fingers. Her name is Marilyn Garrett. I'm not sure if she's Australian or American. And there's some people who make like whimsy drawings, satirical illustrations. There's Alpha Channeling and Tina Maria. These people make erotic arts, but like in the cartoonish version, although Tina Maria just makes erotic watercolors. And it's a whole story how I found her account because I'm very interested in erotica. And I was seeing a whole lot of erotic illustrations that were made with only a specific body, female body type. Like the other ones don't count. And they were always made from a man's point of view. So it's like a whole lot of porn is just made for the man's libido, not the woman doesn't count, she just has to look pretty or look a certain way. So when I found this woman's account, it was really great because she was making erotica from a woman's point of view. And they're like really sensual, soft illustrations. I grew up in a very conservative environment with strict parents where sex was a taboo. You don't talk about it, you don't mention it. And also the church doesn't really teach sex as a good thing. It's a bad thing when you're not married, and when you're married, it's duty. So I just wanted to find out for myself, but very academically because I'm reading like articles and books and looking at ancient illustrations that a whole lot of older people are talking about in little pieces, piecing out this is what's going on in this image. So it's almost like all the pleasure is out of it. We're just looking at the academic sense. But really that's what I wanted to find out, what's the whole deal about this. And also because at school, there were some people who were mentioned that were able to advance in the political scene through sex in some way, like Cleopatra. And sex as part of the traditional economy in Igbo land, for instance, there is what's called the Ikumbara, the open sex institution, where sex is not in any way something that's relegated to a married couple. This is a very bad example, but it's sort of like when they do sex for grades. Although that's a very bad example because young girls are being exploited, but you could pay somebody for farming for you with sex. Yeah, all of these really interesting pieces of information, they just appeal to me in a way that I can't really explain, but it just makes up who I am, I guess. My creative process, well, it really starts with a whole lot of thought process. So I think about the story I'm telling and the best way to tell it. So whether if the painting is made, whether it's going to need a whole lot of writing to accompany it, because there's so much that goes into an image. And with the sort of information I work with, just a little symbol could connect to a whole lot of cultural influences, and that has to be pointed out. So it just starts with the thought process, and sometimes when it's just me, it starts with my dreams. And because my art is also a very important part of my magic. And there's like, maybe if there's a painting that's been produced that's consumable, there's like a whole lot of other things I've gone into it, like drawing on sand, looking at trees, looking at sand. Like, my brother can tell you, we could be walking down the street and I start picking rocks and he's like, can you please stop? I'm not walking next to you right now. Because I'm always looking at these little things because there's a whole lot that I'm thinking about. Maybe there's a symbol I'm trying to explain. Why is this symbol drawn this way? And maybe I just walk down, I see the rock, I'm like, oh, that's why. But I can't really explain. But everything just, connects to each other because a lot of those symbols were taken from nature. They were just natural forms that were being reduced to symbols, so that really explains it. And then I paint. then I do the painting. I have to stretch or iron the canvas and prime it, and then texture it because I often get art block or imposter syndrome where I think I should not be doing this, I'm not qualified to do this. So I go back to, which is why all my paintings have this flowing pattern in the background. I go back to sweeping the canvas, which is just how we used to sweep the floor as children. And after sweeping, we draw. So it makes it really simple. You're just doing what you used to do as a child. It's not difficult. So that's why I have to sweep the canvas first to put that pattern there. And then put the image. Also, traditionally, the Igbo and other people, because Yoruba also sweep in that manner, even if the compound isn't dirty, they will still sweep just because they want that pattern to show, because they feel it makes the place cool to the eyes. So it really explains how simple pattern making was to traditional Western and West African societies. My artistic style is Ukara Ohuru, which means new Ukara. And I also paint in Uri or Uli. And I also make some paintings that are representative of the Mbari structure. There's also the Nomo ghost paintings. And, you know, my artistic style basically is just traditional Igbo aesthetics, you know, a continuation of these traditional Igbo aesthetics. This particular body of work is a study of ancient fertility images from very different cultures, vastly different cultures in the world, and how they relate. I got interested in it from seeing Sheila na gig-like images in other cultures. So Sheila na gigs are European grotesque carvings on rock, and there's a Sheila na gig and the Shon na gig, which is the male one. The Sheila is the female one. So it's a woman with her legs spread open, holding herself open, and it goes back to the belief that the sight of a woman's genitals drives away the devil, drives away demons. So they will put this over doorways, so that, you know, if you're coming in with bad intention, or if you're the devil, if you're a demon, it will drive you away. So since I started from Sheila na gigs, the other figures were Sheila na gig-like figures to me, but, you know, we can't say it started from, because some of those are older than the Sheila na gigs as well. So I could see, for instance, the Egyptian fertility god Min is always depicted with an epiphalic. Epiphalic means erected and exaggerated penis. And there's some other figures as well, you know, that always look like that. So I was, at first, because I didn't know they were all fertility images. I know the Shon na gigs can be used as fertility images, but when I saw all of these different cultures with the same images, I got to know that, you know, they all serve the common function. There was the driving away the evil eye, which also was used in other cultures. Just looking at it, for instance, Herbert Cole, he was an anthropologist who worked in Nigeria and in West Africa. He said all sexual images cause laughter or judgment of a harsh kind, but it causes laughter. So it really does explain why they would think that the devil or the demons looking at these exaggerated, grotesque images would make them leave their evil intentions and walk away. It's a research on the correlating aesthetics of different cultures worldwide, you know, how they all have a certain aesthetic that's very alike to each other, and why in traditional indigenous cultures and their survival in the diaspora. So for instance, somewhere like America doesn't come into the indigenous research because America is vastly populated by non-indigenous people, America and Australia. But the survival of these cultures in the diaspora, these places, you know, really come into the research, because a whole lot of people that descend from the Celts and Ireland came to Australia, and a whole lot of Africans and English people came to America. So they took their cultures with them as well. So, you know, all of that relationship between these different cultures worldwide, just pursuing the theory or the hypothesis at the moment that at the base level, indigenous cultures are the same. So this is like maybe phase one of it. Well, not really phase one, but this is phase one that you can see, because I really did not start from the figurative works. It was the patterns, because we have like this pattern drawn this way in Igbo land, and Yoruba has the same pattern, and Hausa has the same pattern, and you go so far away and the Aborigines of Australia have the same pattern. So how come and why? So that's, you know, where my interest is, all of these relationships. For instance, an Egyptian pharaoh once went to Australia and died there. But before he died, he left them some symbols, and those are the Aboriginal symbols for the sun. And that Aboriginal symbol for the sun is the same as the Egyptian symbol for Aten. Aten is the sun god. So yeah, if you didn't know that story, you would say they look alike, but I don't know why. There's a very interesting usage to the indigo in society itself, traditional society in this case, and also in the cult, because the cult is now the little time capsule that has taken this aspect of tradition for us into our modern world, so we can see this is why. So in traditional society, because not only the cult used indigo was what everybody used, but not everyone could use every shade of indigo. So it's like how they wear the turbans in these countries with these desert areas where they wear the turbans. So one fold means you've gotten to a particular stage in life, and two folds, the older you go, the more folds you add. So the lighter the indigo, the lower the level in the cult. As it gets darker, is a higher level. Also in societal usage, a newborn baby would not wear very dark indigo, unless that newborn baby was maybe a ritual baby, maybe like a baby that the baby's a prophecy has been foretold about what this baby would do. This baby is really important to the society. So just to show how much they could cover the baby in cowries and dark indigo, all of those to show how highly ritually placed that baby is. But a young girl would not wear dark indigo. Maybe she should wear like a little bit darker than the lightest form. And maybe when a man just comes of age, maybe when he's just been circumcised, he would wear a darker shade. So the colors also had different meanings. I just used like a halfway dark shade, because if I started doing all of those levels, it's going to take a lot of time to explain to people. So just a halfway stable shade that just goes, yeah, this is indigo. It's recognizable as indigo. So, but particularly in my work, the indigo is because it's Ukara, which is the cloth of the Igbo society, and it's indigo. Although they also have Ukara that is dyed with camwood, so it's sort of reddish, dark, sort of reddish brown. Also dyed with something called Odo in Igbo. Not sure what the English name would be. It's yellow ochre. Also a mixture, some are dyed with charcoal, so they're black. But the indigo is the most enduring, like the uniform, but they have variations. There's indigo and white, there's also indigo and red, indigo and yellow, indigo and black, and so on. Just the material, the natural materials they could make dye with, they would make it. And one thing about traditional societies is that, today we like to look at the past and say, if it's vintage, it's good. If it's from the past, we like it. We don't like the new ones. We don't like the plasticky ones. But in the past, they wanted the new ones. If my own can be different from his own, give it to me. So, it's like the Igbo say, Bano, Obaroho, the new one. The trendy one is what they want. They're always trying to one up the old one, get better than the old ones. I just set out to continue some practices that I thought I could continue, because a lot of the sentiment among people who study the past, or even people who don't study, but people who are aware to some extent of the past, is that of loss. That's a sentiment that we've lost so much. And always a culprit is the white man. He did this. He took so much from us. We've lost so much because of what this white man did, that nobody's thinking about continuing anything, because we just love to complain. There is preservation, yes, which is good, because a whole lot of the documentations that I've seen were because of this preservation. But preservation just, it takes something and puts it in a box and freezes it. And you can look at that thing, but that's how it's going to stay for life. There should be continuation. And that's what I'm trying to do, or what I think I do, which is also how I started. And it's funny that people think that I started young. I just got out of university. It was part of the sentiment I carried with me in university, that of loss and that of pain. And I just did not want to focus on that loss and pain. I just wanted to do what I can with what I have left. Because, for instance, the very popular Benin mask, the Queen Idia mask, there's 1,001 replicas out there, because people feel that they're helping to continue to keep it alive. But I feel what you should do is go down to the basic formula, break it down. Why was this mask made? What other masks are made that are like this one? For what purpose? How? And then make something else using that formula. So that's what I did with Ukara Ohuru, and what I feel people can also do with a whole lot of other things, by just not making replicas, because replicas, you're doing the same thing. Success, I feel, is people understanding why I make my work, even if they don't understand the work itself. Maybe they don't understand this particular painting, but they know why. And I feel people just seeing my work is a form of success to me, whether they're seeing it on social media or physically or however they can see the work, because I feel that just being able to view art does a whole lot of things for society, for humanity. And success or just helping my people realize that, you know, all is not lost. There's a lot we have, there's a lot we can do what we have, and we don't even need so much to do it. You can just start where you are and just do something with what you have, even if you're doing it for just yourself. It brings a measure of peace and happiness to do it. So I feel just people being able to communicate with my work and to understand why, it's a big form of success for me. So I'd just like to keep doing that, being able to have my work seen in some way, in whatever medium, whether it's through film or books or social media or exhibitions, or however they can see the work, and if they can also know why, even if they don't know what exactly that particular work means. So if I had to pick a favorite, I would say that's my favorite, just because it's me. But I also like this guy, because when I made him, I hated him. I profusely hated him. And you know why I hated him? Because he wasn't of a particular person. This is an Ikenga. And I've been making these Ikengas as a part of my new Ikenga project, and I make them of particular specific people. But this is nobody. So when I was making it, I was like, you mean nothing to me. You're just an Ikenga. I don't care about you. But when I finished, I was like, oh. Now, so yeah, aside from the vanity part where this one that is of me is my favorite, I really like this man. I just like him. But I also like this one. You know, it's hard to say. I also like this one up there. That's one of the most popular images of European Shilana gigs. So people who know Shilana gigs, they most likely know that image. You know, they're meant to be grotesque. They're meant to be ugly. Because you're trying to drive away the devil. So you don't want it to be beautiful. You don't want it to appeal to the devil. So the easiest part was just to make the work. The hardest part was telling myself I should make it. And also the amount of time I had to make them in. I already started it before being given a time bracket. So I could only make so much within that time bracket. But it's fine because it's something that's ongoing. For instance, there's only about 7 countries represented here, and there is about 175 countries in the world. Well, when they see my work generally, I would like for them, if it's possible, to understand the story to an extent. It's why I try to put accompanying writings with each painting. For instance, when with commissions, I always send like a small booklet, whether soft copy or hard copy, explaining everything that's gone in there. And with the way that a whole lot of writing gets crimped and you're told to summarize or put it together, it gets harder. So it's good for me to also be there and talk about it, or just speak with people about it. But just looking at it, if possible, I would like for them to understand the story in the painting however they can, even by just looking at it. If it reminds them of something that's similar, possibly it's the same story, because the way that I work, it's with a repetition, with symbols that are often repeated. So maybe if you saw this and said, oh, this makes me think of a particular water goddess we have in my village, it's probably the same thing. So I just like for them to relate with the work and understand the story as much as possible, whether I'm there or not. The most important lesson that I've learned in my career so far is to keep going however I can. Like, there's a painting I made, and it's a water goddess washing herself. So she's water and she has a pot of water as well, and she's washing herself. And it's like how water cleanses itself by flowing. So, and if there are like rocks in the water and sand and charcoal or gravel, it makes the water get even cleaner, and to also get charged with I think it's called negative ions. Yeah, that is good. Because when we have water these days, it's not really, I don't like to say this often so that people don't start to think that it's unhealthy, and also so that I don't think it's unhealthy because it's what's accessible. But having water just stored in an immovable state and often in plastic isn't really good for water, because water is a living thing, it needs to be in a living state. So that's why some people say tap water is better, because it's flowing. So just keep going is what I've learned, is the best that I've learned, no matter in what form, because you see water seeps on through little cracks. Well, however it can, they say it has no enemy, it goes everywhere. So just, be like water, I guess, is the message.